Okay, good morning, everyone again. Welcome again to the session. I am Monica Mithun Shetty from PMIPCC chapter. And on behalf of everybody, again, wish you a very, very happy Independence Day for the people who have joined in late. And we are now getting ready to get started. During the registration, over 70% of you have mentioned that you are experiencing an increasing dip in your focus and drive for results during times of lockdown. And more than 73% of you have mentioned that you are struggling to keep focus during these adverse times that we are currently facing. In fact, in our current times, as if everybody already knows, we are living through adverse situations, and the constant threat to life has become an unavoidable new normal for all of us. But a lot of us are still struggling to reality. However, this is the way of life for many brave hearts, especially our Indian Armed Forces, who always have been in this situation, and this has been their usual way of life, where staying focused in adverse times is a key life skill. And that is why we thought, who best to speak on this topic other than a real life hero who has already been through it all in his 36 years of service in the Indian Navy. We're truly privileged to have here with us Commodore G Prakash, now Sena Medal, Indian Navy retired, specialist in air warfare and anti-submarine warfare, and captain to 3 warships and 4 shore bases. He's an avid speaker. His session in the PMIPCC annual conference in Gyan Lahiri 2016, he received a standing ovation by everybody. Even years later, people still remember his session. He's also a writer. He has a newspaper column on strategic affairs. And for many people who do not know, he has co-authored a book of short stories, which is also being released today. He's a sportsman, a singer, a multi-talented personality. Truly a multi-talented personality, a truly all-rounder in true sense. We're very thankful to you, Commodore, for having taken out time from your schedule for us today. And we're also thankful for all the real-life heroes from our armed forces who are keeping our country safe. And since you're here, on behalf of everybody, we would like to say thank you so much. Please accept our heartfelt gratitude for your service to the nation. And thank you so much. And now I would like to hand over to you to take it forward, please.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Are you giving me the presenter
Yes,
rights?
I am just sharing the presenter rights to you. Meanwhile, I would just like to re-announce everybody, please stay on mute so that the session can get through smoothly. And any questions, please put it on the Q&A box so that we can take it up in the Q&A section. Thank you.
Okay, have you given me the rights?
Yes, can you check now, Commodore? You should be able to
okay.
see the slides.
Okay, is the PPT on?
Yes, Commodore, we can see your slides and we can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica. It's a pleasure to be back with PMI Pearl City. Happy Independence Day to everyone in the audience. And what an Independence Day to speak on a subject of staying focused during adverse times when we are in one absolutely unprecedented adverse time. When even a microorganism has been able to show humanity that all our progress and what we thought was independence has been robbed of us, could be robbed of us by even somebody as small as that. Anyway, I am going to, this is a time when the whole world is understood that anything, the mightiest can fall, and the greatest of plans crash with the first contact with the enemy. Even the mightiest can fall. So innovation, therefore, is the key for everyone. The flyer, which you all have seen, says that the military is always in adversity, and we constantly face threats to our lives. However, we look at it a bit differently. Why? Because you would have seen, say, headlines like this: Indian Navy on high alert amid possible seaborne park-based attack, and all that. You would see it in newspapers, on TV. But let me tell you, actually, it doesn't mean much to us, because within the armed forces, we don't need any separate high alert. For instance, for example, any ship, submarine, or aircraft which is operational is ready to sail whether you are on high alert or not in the same period of time. On a Sunday afternoon, you wake up people at homes and say sail within 4 hours. The ship would have sailed under 4 hours. Now that's why I said for us this doesn't make much of a difference. That is because war is our default setting, and it's only the intensity that changes. Now, failure in this is, of course, a possibility in whatever missions that we undertake. But then it's not an option. Failure is not an option, because when the nation goes to war, the nation does that after having tried out everything else and failed. So this is the last hedge, and hence failure is not an option. So what is the answer? The answer is that we train to handle failure, to avoid failure. And how do you do that? And that's what I'm going to speak about today. Life at sea most often is not as serene and calm as you can see through that porthole on a ship. It very often is like this. It's rough. Now, I'm going to talk about a story of one stormy night at sea, from where we were lucky enough to come back. And I am lucky enough to be taking this session today. The last time I spoke to PMI in Hyderabad, I had covered a larger scope event of our 2 weeks tsunami relief at Sri Lanka. Now, I was commanding a frigate in Bombay, and from there, within 2 days, after loading in Cochin, we land up in Gaul, tsunami hit Gaul in Sri Lanka, and then do massive amount of work for the next 2 weeks. But then the difference was that only the coastal regions of Sri Lanka had been hit, and a strong, good country like Sri Lanka had lots of support that they could give us. But then there are occasions, like in this pandemic, where sometimes you are left absolutely alone, you and God, luck, and your training, nothing else. So I'm going to tell a story of that variety. The setting is this. Now, I was on board a ship called INS Gomati, and this happens to be Gomati. By the way, for your information, all the photographs that I'm using today I have taken from the internet, and wherever I have been lucky to get Indian ships, it is there. Otherwise, please don't bother about the country markings, uniforms, because I have only used the pictures for their applicability to my story. But I luckily got exactly the ship that I'm talking about, Gomati, and a seeking helicopter, which is the second character in the story, actually going into land there. On this ship about 26 years ago, and it's going to be about a mission that we undertook. Now, the helicopter and the ship are a great combination. That's why we call her mother. Actually, we call her mother, and the helicopter is the baby. And between them, they make a strong partners. Now, this helicopter was brand new when it came in the end of 80s, and it was at that time the best helicopter in the world, because in the next decade, many strong nations actually made their multi-role helicopters based on this design and architecture. Now, you can see the aircraft actually firing missiles in this picture. The aircraft can come and stay for prolonged periods, hovering at about 50 feet above water, and lower a sonar, which you can see actually there, to the depths beyond 330 meters, and look for submarines, and that's the maximum they go to anyway. And thereafter, when you get them, you can actually fire torpedoes of the kind you can see the torpedo actually going out from a Siki. Now, a ship like that could actually, with these two helicopters on board, could actually influence events within about 500 miles, that is 1,000 kilometers around her. So this aircraft has got 4 people, 4 officers inside the aircraft. We have 2 officers. That is the place from where they physically fly the aircraft. You can actually see them looking at an aircraft carrier through their windscreen. You can see the complex set of panels in between them, and there is much more above their heads and within reach. From here, they fly the aircraft. Now, someone has to use the missiles, the torpedoes, electronic warfare, the radars, the communication, the navigation, and the tactical picture. That is done by the other 2 officers who are behind the cockpit. Now, that is a picture of that. So, among these 4 officers, whoever is the senior most becomes something called the captain of the aircraft, like the captain of a ship. Okay, so that's the setting. I could not get many photographs of mine from those days, and I got only this spoiled, half spoiled photograph of me ready for flying in those days. Yes, I had hair then. The mission, we were actually deep inside the Indian Ocean. I think the nearest land was Diego Garcia, maybe about 600 miles away, and a mission had to be flown for about 45 minutes in the evening. The sky was overcast, and from the net, I actually found a picture which looks like the conditions in which we actually took off. Our fantasy is always a nice moonlit night with beautiful water, no waves. And but that day, what happened was that as we picked up from the ship and flew off, a slight drizzle started. Halfway into the sortie, it became a rain. That is okay. We continued operating. And at the end of our 45 minutes, we were coming back to land. Now, by that time, the sea was turning out to be like this. And a storm suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The situation from the cockpit was actually like this, with the Vipers going full speed. Hardly anything could be seen, and the Vipers hardly ever are used at high speed. But that day, nothing could be seen from the cockpit. And I could see raindrops the width of my finger, thickness of my finger, hitting my window on my left side at almost 90 degrees. That is the kind of winds that came with the storm. So the situation was a helicopter flying in a condition like this. And as we switched, they produce a lot of power, and that is bad for human beings on board the ship. So when you come in for landing, you got to switch off all the systems. So I switched off all the systems, and as we were coming into land for the first time, the situation became this. It became an absolute thick black that you can imagine. A storm had completely descended on us, and we aborted the first landing attempt. That is called an approach. We call it approach. We left the first approach. We climbed up, came back again tried to land. We could not. Now, the only other ship with us was a smaller one, which in any case we could not have landed. And there was no land anywhere near for us to divert and go and land. So we had to wait in this place and check out what we could do under the situation. So when you get into extreme trouble, first thing is you take control. So you climb up. We climbed up to about 3,000 feet. I switched on all my systems again, checked for the weather on the radar. We found that the sky was clear about 20 miles away. And the ship too has excellent sensors, and the ship assessed the weather themselves. And there was a lot of discussions between the ship and us. And we again decided to start trying to land. Now, as we now started to trying to land, we would go around, come behind the ship, start descending, and at about maybe 100 feet, 150 feet, we would abort and move because we just couldn't see the ship. The ship, of course, switched on all her lights. You know, when you drive a car, we switch off all the lights inside because it blinds you. The same way, ships also do not switch on anything inside. and nor outside unnecessary lights. But that day, just to ensure that we see them, the ship switched on all the lights. You saw two massive hangars within which the helicopters are parked. They raised the hangar shutter doors, switched on all the white lights, the tube lights. We still couldn't see the ship. The ship brought out 500-watt bulbs, 50 of them, one after the other, kept them on the deck, pointed skywards for us to see the ship. We could not see the ship. Because, see, we could hold the ship on radar. The ship could hold us on their radar. But that is of no use because once you come into land, the pilot has to spot the deck and move in and sit down safely. The ship is moving through, the ship is heaving like hell because of the tremendous waves that are running. Now, here many things came to our help. While we were, we had already passed 2 hours, then we went on to our third hour, and we had done 17 approaches already, which is unheard of. There was this real thought about how much of fuel we were left with. Now, we had gone for a planned 45-minute session for a mission. Now, it is not that we fuel only for 45 minutes. When I told you at the beginning of the presentation that why is it that when we say that the ships can sail immediately, aircraft can fly immediately, that's because however long we stay at sea and when we return to harbor, before we go back to our families, we do certain things. First is we wash down our ship because of salt content will produce rust. We wash down our ship, we wash down our helicopters, and then we take in fuel. We'll take in water for drinking as well as for steam ships. We take it for boilers. We take in rations, food. We take in ammunition. Whatever has been used up is already all completely replenished, and then only we go home. Because as you go home, reach home, and just say hi to your wife, that may be the time. The next call might come, and you may go for another 2 months, and you can't waste time trying to load stuff at that time. So the standard procedure was to always have at least 4.5 hours of fuel on board, and that saved us that day because we had 4.5 hours. The helicopter, of course, can take much more than that, but a standard thing is 4.5 because you can cater for then weapons also, because the 2 engines have to carry whatever weapons, people, fuel, all that weight has to be carried by the 2 engines. Now, so we reached about maybe 3 hours, 45 minutes of endurance already gone, and now we were discussing what more can be done. Now, the captain was on the RT with us. Captain was a very senior aviator. He himself was a fighter pilot, captain of the ship, and he was in touch with the helicopter. And we were also discussing inside what could we do now, because we don't know when the storm is going to pass. Among the many discussions that we had, there was even a suggestion that came from the captain of the ship that maybe we could consider coming somewhere closer to the ship, coming to hover, like I showed you how we would hover to find submarines, and lower ourselves using a particular methodology and come to about 20 feet above water, and the 4 of us jump out into the water, whereafter the ship would try to pick us up using a boat. Now that is a very tough call. Now to lower even a boat at that time. Now that is the time, what a word which A.K. Hungle made famous in the movie Sholay really hit us. You remember the scene when he is near the mosque and his son's dead body is brought on a horse, and he comes to that silent crowd and he asks, "Bhai, is the nara kyun hai?" Now that deathly silence is what we experienced momentarily. But then, Isar, my postmate, was the first to react. In Hindi, he said that there are sharks down below and they don't seem to be vegetarians. And that actually changed the mood again back in the aircraft, and we are back on our feet, we are talking to each other, and we were cheerful. Now, the captain of the ship is the boss of the ship, is a big man. Same way, captain of an aircraft is the boss on the aircraft. He can decide what to do and what not to do. So the captain, after discussions on board, decided that we will not do this. We will not jump out of the aircraft. It will be 4 of us. and an aircraft gone for sure. Now, so he decided that he will continue to try to land till the last possible and then think of other options. So we were back at our old effort. Now that is the time one more bit of providence came. The co-pilot that day was, he remembered that 2 days before that, he and another pilot who was on board, but in this sortie he was not flying, he was on the ship. They both were sitting in this first pilot's cabin at sea when they were free, and they were just leafing through professional books. They were reading a British book on flying procedures, and the last chapter was something called Emergency Low Visibility Approach, or ELVA. Now, what was that as per the British? I told you that the helicopter you saw can come and hover at about 50 feet to look for submarines. Now, the helicopter comes to that position from a certain maneuver, which starts at 200 feet. Now, this coming from 200 feet to a height which you have set on your, based on your decision, which is 50 feet when we look for submarines, to be 52 feet to be exact, that is done by a computer, not by the pilots. Pilots just monitor it. So, ELVA, emergency low visibility approach, as per the British, was use this method to come to any point that you are unable to come to. All you had to do was to know the point, steer the ship. So what we could do was to now fly over the ship, and as we fly over the ship says, you are now coming overhead, me now overhead, and you mark the position, you go around, you come back, and now start using this method of computer, come down to any height that you want to, in a position which you think where the ship is. Now, we did that, and we came down, to hover. The helicopter shudders a lot as the computer takes charge and brings you from 200 feet to the height that we had set. We had set 73 feet because 72 feet is the height of the highest height of the ship. And we came down with prayers in our minds, hearts, and we came to hover at 73 feet. We still found nothing but that thick, black, dark night and the storm. Now, you would have seen in village dramas, you have these two people holding up a screen and the curtain. And when the drama has to start, they just walk off. In Kathakali and all, you would see that. Now, as per the ELVA procedure, once you come to hover and you don't see the ship, you can keep inching forward, slowly touching forward, and you will see. And the ship was exactly there. As we moved ahead, as if from the village drama, someone removes a curtain, the storm just moved, and the bright ship was in front of us. We went and landed. As we landed, we could not believe that we are back because we had hardly any fuel left. As per our custom, our engineer officer came on top, Lieutenant Naresh, and we spoke to him, went down, we found the captain, and we found Commander Nair, our second in command, standing drenched on the deck, waiting for us. That is the mother waiting for actually her baby. We embraced everybody. We felt very stupid doing it, but we embraced each other, all of us, then rested for some time, and then the captain opened a bottle of champagne for us to celebrate our second homecoming and second birthday. Now, what were the takeaways from this? How did we? What are the good things that we did that saved us our day, our life? First, with the dedication. You see, two young lieutenants sitting in their boss cabin on a free day, not doing anything. They could have read a magazine, they could have watched a movie, they could have just chit-chatted, but instead they actually went through a professional magazine, a professional book, and imbibed something that they did not already know. They gained knowledge. There was this prudent routine practice of fueling at 4.5 hours, though it was only a 45-minute sortie. There was solid in the ship. And inside the helicopter also, we had a lovely process of handling this issue. There was never any panic. There was not even panic when we had that suggestion of that we could consider even jumping out of the aircraft. Now, since I was going to talk about a very serious thing which actually affected a lot of us, we still can't forget without having goose pimples. I did my fact checks because after 26 years, I was going to say this, this story again. So I spoke to all the old crew. I spoke to the spare pilot who was on ground. He's retired. He's in Dehradun now. I spoke to our second in command executive officer. Command Nair is in Cochin. And I also traced the co-pilot, Mohit sir, Captain Mohit sir, my co-mate again. He is flying civil helicopters. He was in Rajamundry day before yesterday. On off watch he went and he's gone back to Delhi. And he's supposed to have logged on in this session. And we had fixed up that he will say hi to all of us on video. So if you would excuse me, I will just check on WhatsApp whether he has logged in. And if he's logged in, I will request Mohit sir. No, sorry, Mohit sir has not been able to log on. So, I'm sorry that could not happen. Mohit, are you with us by any chance?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Oh, fantastic, Mohit. Monica.
Yes.
Hello, Monica. I'm going to stop sharing. Can you get Mohit onto this thing? I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Should I stop sharing?
Commodore.
Yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
you can just stop sharing. Mohit, if you can just come on video, please. Yes, we can see you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm here. Can you see me all?
Yes, Captain Mohit. Yes, Mohit.
Okay, great, GP, and morning to all the ladies and gentlemen and the participants over here. What Commodore G Prakash is trying to bring out is a very unique situation that we all crew landed up in another set of unique operations called the naval helicopter operations. It's a very complex interface between the ship and helicopter. But what Commodore Prakash has very nicely simplified it about that would have been a fateful night that we as a set of crew fought back against all odds. I, even today, 26 years later, and I'm a commercial helicopter pilot now, flying all throughout, that night is so vivid in my memory, and whatever Commodore Prakash has brought out is a fraction of what we felt at that time. And entirely, it was the crew effort that we refused to give up, despite perhaps the ship giving up on us. And we emerged victorious, and the story is there for Commodore Prakash to tell you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohit. Thanks, Mohit. Thanks, Mohit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
You can continue with your.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me just go back to sharing.
Yes, Commodore, your screen is coming on.
Am I with you now, Monica?
Yes, we can see your screen.
PPT also?
Yes.
Okay, I go ahead. So thank you, Mohit. So, it is actually, what is it that, how do we stay prepared for adversity? It's our ethos that prepares us for adversity. Now, that sounds very big, your ethos and all that. What are the proof? I will tell you the proof. It's very simple. Because anyone else would have done these things the same way. There was nothing special that we were and that we did. And why? That is because of the structure of the armed forces. The officer corps is the golden center from which the fragrance, the light is supposed to spread to the rest of the environment, which is mostly our soldiers. How does it happen? Officers are very carefully chosen, very thoroughly trained, groomed well, and trusted to rule the service. Am I okay? I can hear somebody talking. Monica, can you hear me properly?
Can hear you very well. Please
okay. Okay, sorry. Now, and that has to start from training. Now, this great book called Shantaram, written by David Gregory Roberts, says that a good soldier is known by what he can endure and not by what he can inflict. It is, for a soldier, it's your ability to absorb pain that makes you a great soldier, not ability to wreak havoc. That starts at the academies. So adversity becomes the main component of all our training. You can see this grand Naval Academy, a real pride of the nation, cradle of leadership at Edimala in Kerala. Now, there, life isn't easy. It is great. What cadets go through is this: academics, that is 4 years of a BTech, and plus physical training, plus military training, plus extracurricular activities, personality development, leadership training. All this in one day. That means they have very early hours, very late nights. Ego in them is completely rubbed out through a very painful process, because ego is the thing that actually sets you back in any teamwork. Relentless mental pressure is piled on them, and perennial uncertainty is their lot. Now, for an example, that physical thing, thrice in our NDA time of 3 years, we have to do this something called a Josh run at the end of a camp. I'm just showing this as an example. It's about 40 kilometers through the hills around Pune, through the ghats. And it's carrying about 15 kgs weight each person. You carry a rifle with 4 kgs. Now, that is no weight, but that is very irritating. The rifle, it's the shape and its hardness. It's a competition among squadrons, so it's a life and death issue. You are not allowed to leave anybody behind. So if from your team, if someone collapses, you carry him and run this 40 kilometers. Now, I have actually managed to get photographs from friends of Ojoshan. This is how they progress. Now, it is not, and they have to go through various checkpoints. Each checkpoint is a hilltop. So they have to keep climbing peaks to report to that area. And they're like in a marathon, you collect your tokens. That is me. I managed to get this photograph from a friend in the circle, poised for a Joshan exactly 40 years ago, actually 39 years ago. It leaves, what this kind of physical activity leaves you today. Yes, it leaves you with a permanent sense of invincibility. It may be terribly wrong, misplaced, but it is there. And it is that invincibility that the service builds on later. And this adversity continues because the golden core of the service is the officer corps. They have to be chosen and trained and nurtured correctly. Now, we don't need the enemy always for adversity. You have dangerous weather, you got dangerous activities, you got dangers on board, enough to keep us in fine metal. For instance, you can see this massive ship, plowing into water. There is so much of physical danger being on top. Inside, from the seasickness, you have discomfort. But with all that, you're supposed to think, work, and perform. You can see a fueling in progress. That's about a 4,000-ton ship, actually fueling from a much bigger ship. It is the diesel or aviation fuel, water for drinking, water for steam engines, or all could be coming through this. And if they stretch and if they part, if they break, they will come back like a whiplash and slice through people. And these are dangers. There are hundreds of kilometers of pipelines inside with high powers, high energy steam. There is high pressure liquids running. There is electricity. There is the work. There are hundreds and hundreds of tons of explosives, fuel. It's one deadly mix. But then you don't even think about it. You can see even large ships get engulfed in waves. You can see people crossing from one ship to the other on a rope way, and both ships are moving, by the way. You can see our helicopter. Again, this is an Australian picture, actually. It's exactly what we have, both the ship and the helicopter. You can see when the helicopter is landing, what is the clearance between its front blade and the ship? It's hardly anything. If something goes wrong somewhere, it is catastrophic. That's the inside of a submarine. No, they live a beautiful life inside these confines. And you ask a submariner, he wouldn't give it up for the world. Now, breakdowns are relentlessly practiced because there is so much that could go wrong. And that is all the time that's done. And crew, because of this, gains confidence in its captain, officers, and themselves, which is the most important. And thereafter, the Navy runs on its, its honor, its code of honor, esprit de corps, courage, patriotism, professional pride, discipline, loyalty, integrity, duty, and example. Now, this is what our core values on which the service thereafter somehow hurdles along. Now, through all this new normal, we are talking about COVID as a new normal, which changed life. Now, for us, this is the new normal. That's our new normal. We continue to have fun, whatever be our circumstances. we play volleyball at sea like anybody else. It is just that you would wonder what if the ball goes into water. For that, the ball is nicely encapsulated in a net, and that net and the ball is now tied to the top of the net with this very thin string, tall one. So you hit, smash, the ball goes outside, you draw it back like you would draw water from a well. And in all this, we combine sweat and smiles and have real fun and never actually see this whole thing as adversity. We see it as an absolutely positive challenge. Now, of my 35, in my 35 plus years in service, plus the 3 years in NDA, before that 8 years in Sainik school, I have actually wore a uniform for 47 years of my 57-year-old life now. Now, and luckily for me, for 15 years before I retired onwards, I've been speaking on various subjects to a lot of audiences, including civil audiences. And today, after I've retired now, I am fully into strategizing, into problem solving, leadership, motivational lectures. And if anyone wants to reach me, these are the places that you can reach me. And as Monica said today, it is also a great feeling that one more line could be word could be added to my CV as an author, because our book Filter Coffee Chronicles got released today. Now, with that, I will stop my prepared presentation and then we'll take on questions. Monica, over to you.
Thank you so much, Commodore. Your session was really very, 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 very interesting. A whole new perspective to adversity, not looking at it as adversity anymore, but as a positive challenge. I think a lot of us on the audience will truly align to that phrase from the movie House the Jewish Voice after your session. Thank you so much. We have a few brief questions that people have shared with us during registrations. And a lot of them this question, and I'll club it up and ask you, if there's one lesson from the armed forces that you can use for how to deal with adversity for civilians, what would that be?
Okay, can you, am I back proper on screen now? You can see me? And
yes,
the PPT is not there.
We can see you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one, because there are so many positive things to pick up from. You have to pick up from professional competence, integrity, commitment. But I suppose if you have to pick up just one, it would be, I think, preparing for failure. It's the most important thing. In good times, we tend to ignore bad times, which could always come. The sine wave theory. Now, it's that is what the armed forces do actually. Now, I don't know. How do we convert that to the corporate world? Now, when say you have a pandemic of this kind and businesses have been hit, then those with reserves manage for some time, but the reserves also will soon run out, and then you have the option of firing a few, or everybody across the spectrum taking a pay cut. I think the second option is a better one, because when your company comes back on track, when the economy comes back on track, you will need the same people whom you fired back with you. I think from a military man's point of view, never leaving your team is a better one, and everybody is suffering together. So if that happens, then the problem is, I did a session with a friend's company retired in Bombay in the beginning in January. And they actually raised this problem of, they told me, sir, you should also think about how do we handle the, changes in our fortune. So I told them that, look, what we see as one of our great merits is that great military median that we follow. We have not, whether you are dining the President of India or having visiting President of India, or whether you're having a little unit function, there is a certain military model. We don't go above that. We don't go below that. So the thing is that you are actually practicing moderation. And so when things happen, when things go wrong, it actually doesn't affect you. Now, the same things happen to our family. Now, let's see. For example, when the 1993 blasts happened in Bombay virtually shut down. South Bombay virtually shut down. And I think for over a month, even milk was not being distributed. The only community that survived this beautifully was the naval community. Because in our place, Navy Nagar, we were completely self-sufficient. We have our own beauty parlors. So you may not go to a upmarket beauty parlor, but you will go to a beauty parlor. you will go to a cinema. It's there. You got your gyms, you got your clubs, you got your playground, you got your schools, you got everything there. And while we are selected, trained, they come from the civil society, then soon get adapted to this, and they learn to be happy with what they have. So finally, before saying that, I know if to apply this to your world, you need to actually engage people who can come and speak and tell them. You need to talk. Who would not, at the end of the day, love an employer who is bothered about your welfare and your family's welfare? That is normal for us, and I suppose something that the civil world could learn from. Monica.
Thank you, Commodore. Now that you've shared what we should be doing, I think the next question would be, what is the important things one must not be doing in the adverse times? And this has come from Ravi Kumar.
Okay. Now, I think that is quite simple. What we must, okay, when something goes wrong in an aircraft, let's say something goes wrong in the aircraft, it has happened so many times. It also happens for practice, in the sense that you have an experienced pilot putting another pilot through emergencies. What he does is he actually blindfolds him. He wears a physical blind, and that is simulated dark night. And then he takes up the aircraft in a certain way, puts it in some funny attitude, and then he will switch off 2 hydraulic systems. There are 3 in our aircraft at least, and he will tell him to take over. So the pilot who has to take over from this funny condition, he says a few things immediately. He says it out. He says, contain aircraft, contain aircraft, contain aircraft. That's what he says. That means the first thing is to come back on track. That's everything else you can look after. But you can't fall out of the sky. You have to be a helicopter flying like a helicopter first. Okay, so contain aircraft. So I think it is the most important thing not to do is not to panic, not to give up, because you must remember that everything passes. There is nothing that does not pass, and we must, you could cut frills, you could do, you could do whatever you want, but you could, just avoid panic, and you will be able to recoup one day, and things will look up. That's it, Monica.
The next question, thank you. The next question is, adverse times are unavoidable. What would be your recommendation on how to self-motivate during these times? That's come from Ranganath.
Self-motivate. Okay. I think, see, our happiness, there is a Hindi movie. There's a Hindi movie in which there is a beggar woman sitting with her family on the streets of Mumbai, and she says that, in Hindi, she says, "Idhar Mumbai mein, hawa mein, paisa udta hai, bas pakadne wala chahiye." There is money flying in the atmosphere, in the air of Bombay. All you have to do is to just catch it here. Now, no one is going to deliver half a kilo of happiness into your, outside your door every day. You can't order it through Swiggy. Now, so what do? I think our happiness, our motivation is in our hands. It's in nobody else's hands. So it is our response to things that go wrong. Things will go wrong. It's our response that actually matters, which decides our, motivation. Now, and one more thing I can tell you that, in the service or in the academy, I wanted to become the academic cadet captain. I never became anywhere 5 miles close to it. In the Navy, I would have thought that I should have become that and I would have got this. But maybe I didn't get it. So what do? Do I become despondent? Do I hang myself? No, you don't do that. You have to be happy with what you have. So in this, my Sainik school, actually, I cannot help but mention. There we realized that, the most important thing was to play. Because when you play a lot, you lose a lot. When you lose a lot, you learn to come back into next competition and beat the other rival houses to come back into that overall trophy. So we played a lot, and we also realized that you can play anywhere, and we lost a lot and we won a lot. I think, if you just do that, things will be all right. Monica.
In continuation to that question, there's another one which says, when there's a negative situation, like in current times when people are getting infected with COVID, and supposing your team member is getting infected, testing positive, and everybody's getting into panic, how do we handle that stress? And that's come from Kapil.
How do we handle the stress? Yeah, okay. You got to have actually how do we, let's go back to the example that we had on the ship, how we lived our life there. All of us had a lot of our personal activities, our own stress busters, which helped us cope through times, of uncertainty. I will tell you a story of I have been captain of 3 ships. You said in the introduction. Now, bringing a ship into harbor or taking a ship out of harbor is a very stressful thing because the ships don't have brakes. That is the problem. Ships either go forward or you come back. Now, once you start moving, it's about 3,000, 4,000 tons of steel. It doesn't stop where you think it will stop. It will take miles to stop, actually, if you don't use your engines in the opposite direction. When you're in a harbor, you got ships all around you. You move out without hurting anybody, and you again come back and part the same way at the end of it without hitting anybody. It's a very tough thing. And many commanding officers, lose a lot of hair or they gray in this process. And also you saw that fueling outside, then coming very close to ships and staying under those conditions up close, facing a lot of danger. The captain is solely responsible. Now, in my case, and everybody is nervous. I won't say that anybody is a Superman, and so I used to be very nervous for any time the ship actually had to come alongside, or to cast off from there. But the first thing was not to show it your team. So you had to take it on inside yourself. What I would do is, in my answer to this is singing. I always sang as I came alongside. When I left off, the more I sing, that I'm more attention actually, but I never showed it. I would sing a cheerful song and continue. And at the end of the day, you have to take these things with a pinch of philosophy that you could always fail. That is there is this famous book by Gurcharan Das called what is that book? Can someone say that the difficulty of being good? Yeah, the difficulty of being good. He had this doubt as to why is it that big tycoons who built up companies from scratch and you reach such high levels that even the visiting president of the United States calls on you, comes and meets you. How would you create a crime, commit a crime, and go back into jail and be there? So he had such doubts. And why do billionaires who have billions between themselves fight for a few millions? So he actually analyzes the Mahabharata and comes out with a beautiful book called The Difficulty of Being Good, where he says that we are only humans. And I will just say one part, just one story out of the many he writes in that. And he says that, say, the oldest Pandav, the Yudhishthira, is the son of the god of Dharma. He is Dharmaputra. I mean, you can't have anyone more virtuous than him. But then what does he end up doing? He gambles away his wife, his life, his kingdom, his brothers, his freedom, and brings on a catastrophic war. So Gurcharan Das nicely argues that if the greatest man, the man who epitome of virtue, could not walk the straight path, who are we? Many things can happen to us. We can fail. So taking things with a pinch of lots of philosophy, I think is a beautiful stress buster. Monica.
Thank you, Commodore. The other question which has come in is, even adults are finding it difficult to accept the current situation, and kids even more. What is your recommendation how to manage kids during these kind of situations?
Okay. First of all, I don't have a kid at home. Our daughter is 24, so she's no kid. But then, even she finds it tough. But I know close relatives who have small children at home. I think there is no option in this, Monica, but for the children, for the parents to make their sacrifices. Okay. Now, how do you make that? That means you can't be watching Netflix and expect the children to manage with the toys they have. This is the time that you have to talk to them. I've been watching the US politics for certain reason for the last 3.5 months very closely. In fact, from March, it's almost 6 months now. And I've been seeing all kind of discussions there about opening schools and people going back to work. So I know the discussions that happen there. Now, I know that young parents today have this problem that they have to go back to work so the children have to get back to school, but that may not be possible today. And this is one of those sacrifices they will have to make, because ultimately they say in the US that beyond a certain stage, by a certain age, those children can be actually convinced about the positives of this, saying that we are staying home and taking this pain so that you protect grandpa, grandma. We are doing it for others so that you don't go out and get the virus back. But even smaller children, what do you do with them? Now, that is, I think, the time when you have to, there is a lot of requirement on the, I think, a social requirement, duty on the type of the education sector, on part of the entertainment sector to actually provide content specifically for children today. You can't now recycle old stuff. This is the new normal, as you say, and they will have to get used to it. Another thing, one last thing is that, there is another lecture of mine called The Three Breakups of the 20th Century. Three things broke up in the 20th century, which is going to have long lasting effects for at least a century. What is that? First was, of course, the breakup of the atom. The people who broke the atom and made the atom bomb said that, no, this is such a huge weapon that, there will be no more war. But absolutely the opposite has happened. Because of that, now anybody can pick up, North Korea can show eyes at, say, USA, or Pakistan can act funny because it's got a nuclear bomb. No, that is one. Second is the Soviet Union breaking up, and it became a unipolar world, and America was alone. And the third most important is the breakup of the joint family. The joint family is gone. And so today we are all nuclear families with all their problems. Now, today we have understood the value of the joint family, because imagine in this condition, if you had grandpa and grandma and uncles and aunts and cousins and a huge team in your house, beautiful life would have been. But today you can't create it. So how do you do it? It can still be done. What is that? Your immediate neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, your community where you live can actually become your joint family again. But for that, we will have to talk, and open up a lot. And last thing is, pick up a hobby, pick up storytelling, something like that, because maybe 30 years from now, you will become a grandma or a grandpa, and you will, maybe in the next pandemic, you have to tell stories to your grandchildren. And if you don't equip yourself now, at that time, God help you. Monica, with you.
All right. The next question is from Peter, and he asks, how can one stay consistent or get back on track even after facing a failure?
Okay. But first of all, there is that old saying that the higher you climb, the more you fall. So while good things happen to you, you must keep yourself in a bit of moderation. You set those great targets for your business and for your activities, for your personal lives, your aims, and you suddenly see a pandemic of this kind coming, which has disrupted the entire world. Other than the personal losses of people, it has also affected industry in every kind, in every way. So now there is no option but to reorient. So I told you the essence is that the assumption that things can always go wrong, which people fail to do. That's not how the world is. See, for example, when this happened, now we have learned as to what things are not required. We are now living our lives, not doing many things that we were so routinely doing. We were visiting places, we are eating out, we are doing this and we're doing that, we're traveling, but we are not doing that today. So you have an opportunity. The virus has shown the world what was required, what was not required. It is up to us to actually now decide, do we learn a lesson from this, or get again influenced by the advertisement influenced world, or maybe in the positive way, go down to even minimalism if possible. So I think it's a question of coming to terms with what has happened and remembering that it happens to the whole world. But at the end of the day, if Japan can come back and become a world power, economic power by 1975 after being bombed out in 1945 and a terrible surrender, or the world recovering from Europe was decimated in two world wars, which happened within 20 years of each other. But where was Europe after that? They came back. So Spanish flu killed millions of people in 100 years ago, but the world came back. So we will come back. The thing is, hold on, don't lose hope, and reorient and reappreciate. Monica.
Thank you, Commodore. We still have a couple of questions, but in the interest of time, just wanted to wrap up the session and then come back, if it's fine. So let me just bring up my screen. And we wanted to say thank you once again, Commodore, for this interesting and inspiring talk that you've shared with us. And I'm sure a lot of people are eager to reach out to you. And this is the contact details of Commodore for all the audience who wants to connect with him. I'm sure you will love to connect with him and hear more about all the stories that he's to share with us. I'm just leaving this on the screen for a couple of seconds for you to take a note of it. We will be sending the slide deck to everybody who has attended the call after the session. We'll be sending out the slide deck with this contact information and also the steps to do the self-claim of the PTU. You can claim one PTU under the leadership category, and that information will also be shared over the email to all the attendees in the next 2 to 3 days. So thank you very much for everybody who has attended the session so far. We do have a few things that we wanted to cover since we have a few interesting guests on our session today. But before that, Commodore, once again, thank you very much. Any wrapping up comments that you would want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Monica. Thank you for the opportunity, first of all. I know what the PMI is because I have been associated with you guys for 16 years. It's a wonderful audience, and the takeoff levels are high, so it's very easy for people to come up and share experiences with you, because it's not always, for a speaker like me, what actually matters is the question and answer session, and an erudite audience like yours always comes up with good questions, which actually enriches us. Now, there are millions of stories inside me. Now, everyone has stories, but not all are used to indexing them and reflecting on them and coming out with lessons. But the most important thing is that when you want the correct story, the story should come on your tongue. Now, that is something of some internal software that God actually blesses you with. So, but those stories will lie there untouched unless someone actually gives the impetus, and that is what an audience like the PMI can do. We are in extremely unprecedented times, but then the world has seen many unprecedented times, and we will live through this on this Independence Day. I wish you all very the best of wishes for your next 1 year. Wish you all the very best. Thank you very much, Monica, for the opportunity, and I would love to hear from a lot of you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Commodore.